Good evening. I'm Paul Barabo from Growth Design Group, one of your colleagues at ACLS, and it's my delight to be able to facilitate our member showcase. We have 5 members that will be presenting a variety of different images and presentations to you. We'll be using a format that is familiar to some of you. Each member will get a minute for an introductory slide to introduce themselves, and then their 20 slides will be timed for 20 seconds each that I will advance, and they will be able to do voice over. At the end of the presentation, after each of our 5 have presented, we will then go to a question and answer period. At that time, I will turn on the webcams for our 5 guests. And if you have a question, I encourage you to raise your hand or to use the raise your hand feature of the webcam, or send a question and I will read it. But if you raise your hand, what I intend to do is to turn on your microphone so that you're able to ask that question directly of one of our guest presenters. Our presenters this evening are Norberto Gutierrez, Sara Hempel Irani, Marilyn Morgan, Scott Parsons, and Gianfranco Tassara. So all of our presenters are here. I am going to begin with our first presentation that will be provided by Norberto Gutierrez.
Great, thank you very much. Well, good evening. My name is Norberto Gutierrez, and I represent the Wood and Iron Factory. We're based in San Diego, California. We're an American company, bonded and licensed in the US, but we manufacture our products in our manufacturing plant in Mexico. My background's in architecture and environmental design, and we had been in business for 23 years. We specialize in architectural millwork. We can provide full design services, or we can work with liturgical design consultants, architects, and building committees. We have the honor of working with Rafael Moneo, Cesar Pelli, SOM Architects, and Santiago Calatrava. We're a proud member of the Architectural Woodwork Institute, which is probably one of the most recognized institutions in charge of writing the architectural woodwork standards. We also have the QCP certification from the same institution, which is their highest quality control certification program. And we are also FSC certified for your lead project. I mentioned that we specialize in wood, and we are very proud of our second generation woodworkers. Our hand carvings are done using authentic techniques used in cathedrals. Our forte is in wood, but we can also work in bronze and artistic metals. This is a bas relief done in a base of an altar for All Saints Church in Mesa, Arizona. We can also provide services in stone. This is a baptismal font in stone and bronze we remodeled from St. Edward's Church in Dana Point. They had an old baptismal font, and we basically removed all the work they had done. We only used the perforation, the carving they had. This is St. Gregory the Great Church in San Diego. This was our first project in 1998 with Hyman and Hyman Architects, and they had this idea of having a metal support pew with African mahogany seats and backs. They had this idea almost like a bench park pew. Our Lady of the Angels Cathedral is one of the most challenging projects we have been involved. We use American cherry for all the pews and chairs, and none of the pews have the same length, and the longest pew is 35 feet long. The aisles are not parallel, so the installation was very, very challenging. St. Vincent de Paul Church in Huntington Beach. This project, we did the whole interior. I'd like to show a picture of the building before the installation and after our installation, because it's very interesting how the furnishings make such a big impact on the scale of the interiors. Once the furniture is installed, the building gets a nice human scale. We use maple for most of the furnishings. We use the inspiration of the rose window and incorporated that through the entire project. In this image, you can see a little better how all the furnishings and decorative metals were incorporated into the buildings. You can see the stations of the cross, contents on the back, and some of the ironwork on the confessionals on the back wall. Here on this picture, you can see the carving of the rose window on the back of the presider chair. You can see that and how we incorporated that element through the project and also in a more organic and abstract way in some of the metal work. These are some of the metal pieces we did in bronze and copper with some of the patinas. This is an ambry, the processional cross, and the sconce for the station of the cross. This is St. John Fisher Church in Rancho Palos Verdes. This is another project. We did the complete interior. We completed this project in American Cherry. In this project, the interior is a little more organic on design. You can see the radius pews, a lot of curves. Here you can see a view from behind the altar before dedication. You can see the mix of wood, stone, and metals. You notice that the pews in this church are radius. The pew ends show the hand-carved texture. We repeated in some of the furniture, and every single detail you see here in the pew end, every single detail was done by hand. It's a hand-carved texture. In this image, you can see the architectural woodwork in the walls with a basket weave pattern with solid wood. We created with this pattern some of the niches for the stations of the cross. This is the furniture. You can see the tabernacle on the left, the modesty screens, the baptismal font, stations, the ambo, and the presider chair. You know how we mix stone, wood, and metal in the same project. St. Edward Church in Dana Point. This is a picture before our installation. They had a big opening on the back behind the crucifix. We created a lot of distraction on Sundays. They have this beautiful view of the ocean behind, and every Sunday you could see this sailing boats behind, which again was a big distraction. Here you can see our solution. We came with the idea of the reverso with cast glass, and we brought down the crucifix. They had suspended in wires, and we brought it down in this new crucifix. Also, the furnishings, we used that as an inspiration from the bell tower, which had a little more angles and straight lines. So we used that as to incorporate the design of the exterior with the interior. In this project, we also had hardwood radius pews. You can see this configuration, and also this is a picture of the tabernacle where we incorporated some of the pattern from St. Edward's tomb into the pattern of the tabernacle, and this is a better view of the crucifix. And if you can see those red lines on the glass trying to present it like the blood from Jesus. Okay, this was our live show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norberto. Wow, that time goes by quickly. Lots of beautiful things to look at. Our next presenter, Sara Hempel, Irani.
Thank you so much. My name is Sara Hempel Irani, and I am a sculptor living in Maryland. I'm originally from Michigan, but 20 years ago, I moved here to work as an apprentice to J. Hall Carpenter, who introduced me to the ACLS. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity. I do sculptures for churches and I do portraiture, and I'm currently working on a monumental bronze for a city park. We are honoring fashion designer Claire McCardle in her hometown. In fact, I'm flying out to Colorado in 2 days to check on my waxes at the foundry there in Loveland. So, but today I'm going to talk about my sculpture of St. Joseph the Carpenter at Our Lady of Mercy in Potomac, Maryland. I worked for them for many years, initially on the Stations of the Cross, and then I did the Virgin Annunciate and St. Joseph in Carrara marble. So here is Our Lady of Mercy in Potomac. It was designed by Dennis Delizio, and they built a new church on the site of a much smaller church, and I think they opened in 2001. This parish took a chance on a young artist. When I did the Stations of the Cross for them, I was still in my early 20s. My projects always begin with napkin drawings in cafes. And St. Joseph doesn't have as expansive an iconography as the Virgin Mary. So it was challenging to find precedent to try to imagine something new with St. Joseph. After several iterations, I landed on this image. The idea came from Matthew, the first chapter, 18 to 25, where the angel tells St. Joseph about the birth of Jesus. I wanted to show him grappling with the idea of God as an infant, as incarnate, and St. Joseph being the father. So the first thing I had to do was to build an armature. Instead of having an enlargement fabricated, I decided to sculpt it directly at the full scale, which was about 30% larger than life. So the armature supports the clay, much like a skeleton would do. So I began with the nude. And I do this because it enables me to hone in on the anatomy of the figure and all the bony landmarks, which ultimately makes the drapery fall just right. So I spent the better part of a year sculpting the clay figure. I articulated every detail, all the fingernails and the toenails and the wrinkles around the eyes, and making the fabric just the right texture. The angel said to him, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus." And this is the finished clay sculpture. Still thinking on that verse, when Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. Here, St. Joseph looks at his worn carpenter hands and wrestles with the unworthiness of cradling the head of the Son of God in such hands. So when I was finished here, I had a mold made and a plaster cast. And the plaster cast I took and I shipped it all the way to Pietrasanta, Italy, which is just south of Carrara. And the next slide should be Pietrasanta. This is the piazza. So after I sent my cast of St. Joseph, 6 months later, I arrived here. And on the right, you can see where it says Bar Michelangelo. There's a little plaque that says in 1518, Michelangelo worked here while selecting the marble for the facade of the San Lorenzo Church in Florence. And his spirit is sort of still in this place. It's the most magical place I've ever been, filled with stone carvers and folks with dusty hats, and there's sculptures tucked in everywhere. And here I am at Studio Antoniazzi with my newspaper hat folded by the master carver. And only the master carver can bestow the hat among other sculptors. This is 2.5 tons of marble. And here I am with the crew. This is the multi-generational carving team, Umberto and Ugo Antoniazzi. And you can see our St. Joseph with the little dots where the macchinetta attached to it so they could copy from my plaster cast. So I was here to do all of the tiny detail work, and I'm resting on his hand, which is still trapped in marble, making marks on the eyelids where I wanted some of the carving to be a little bit more precise. And in the background, there's the plaster cast, and they're identical. So when it was done, we put it on a cargo ship in a container and sent it across the Atlantic Ocean, and it landed in Port Elizabeth, New York. It was at the shipyard for weeks as we awaited customs inspections and clearances, and I had also shipped some clay, which was awfully suspicious. So once the sculpture was released, my installation crew picked them up and brought them to Our Lady of Mercy in Potomac. And we used a crane and a forklift to get it inside the church and up onto the pedestal that was designed on the inside of the church. It was a grueling day of work, and this is Andrew from Canal Street Studios, who was the head of our installation team. And we were exhausted and satisfied with getting this 2.5-ton piece of marble on top of this pedestal. And you can see here, my expression doesn't quite match his. I was so happy having installed this sculpture after years of work. And he is here still contemplating the incarnation. And there's little pegs between his fingers that we left in place during shipping. I had to file away after the fact, after the installation. And here's the two sculptures. I had done the Virgin Mary here on the left, and St. Joseph. I had installed her several months previously. Now there's a crucifix right above, so she is on the right hand of Christ, but on our left hand as we're looking forward. Here's the finished work. The arts committee at Our Lady of Mercy decided that the background needed to be a little bit better contrast, and they put this beautiful, sumptuous velvet drape, which really sets off the whiteness of the marble, and it sort of glimmers in the sanctuary there. And here is a detail of the final work. And I just imagine St. Joseph saying, these hands, how can these rough carpenter's hands hold an incarnate God? And we're here left contemplating that with him. Finally, an image of the inside of the sanctuary. Here you can see the crucifix, and the blue drape just really sets off the marble. And so this is the finished sanctuary, and I also had done the Stations of the Cross on the back wall, which we cannot see in this picture. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Our next presenter is Marilyn Morgan.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Morgan. I'm a liturgical design consultant, and I've been doing this work for over 20 years, and I work out of San Francisco. And I've been a member of the ACLS for a long time, and I'm waiting for the next slide. This is a church in San Diego, and it was a big, dark space, and obviously a church of the 70s. The overall theme of this church was the Shroud of Turin, which is on the reredos wall, and it was a metal outline of the shroud, and the altar was shaped like a tomb. The first thing the pastor told me to do was to get rid of the shroud. And this is the renovated space. We turned it on its axis, lowered the ceiling by 20 feet, and put in an immersion font. And now you can see the stained glass, which was really invisible before because of the darkness. This is the corpus out of bronze, and it hangs in front of a negative space, a negative cross. We wanted to make this figure close enough to the ground so that people could come up and venerate it if they wanted to. Moving on to the next place. This is a chapel in a hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, or actually Gilbert, Arizona. The back reredos wall was done by Jerzy Kanar. We wanted to bring in creation. It's a very important theme to these people in Phoenix, and it's a hand-carved wall. This is a statue of our foundress, Catherine McCauley, and they wanted her to greet the people as they came to the hospital. So she's waving to them, and it's one of the only statues that I've seen that she has a smile on her face. And I actually got to model waving. This is St. Columba's in Oakland, California, and it's a African-American church. And they didn't have enough space in that church to do what they needed to do. They asked me what I wanted, what I thought of it, and I said that everything is in your way to worship as you'd like to worship. So did I say music is a predominant factor in your worship? And the back wall that you see, I think we're okay. One of the things that we needed to do was accommodate space for dancing. That's a very important part of their worship. And so this was before the space was renovated. And this is the presentation of gifts that the women dance up to the altar. This is the renovated space, and it's an antiphonal space, and it's done in African colors. The back wall, the reredos wall disappeared. There is an African carved corpus hanging. Unfortunately, they put the baptismal font behind the altar there. We would have chosen to put it in the front, but that didn't happen. This is a church in the San Diego area, and that glass is not on an outside wall, but it was backlit. The panels above were for sound, and it was not a very beautiful church on the inside. So this is the Blessed Sacrament Chapel in that church, and the design of the stained glass before was a driving force for the design of the altar furniture and also of the windows that we put in. And it's very cluttered and small and dark. This is the renovated space. There's a hand-carved corpus that was done in Peru. They wanted to make the furniture almost the same color as the floor of the sanctuary, and it was decided that the altar furniture would not stand out. This is the Blessed Sacrament Chapel with a new base for the tabernacle. It's much less cluttered, and it's a more pleasing space and gives more light to the space. This is the baptismal font. The people were afraid to have an immersion font, but underneath that cross is the immersion font for adults. They were afraid of the water spilling over, so that was a compromise of having the water spill within the upright font. They got so excited when they saw the cover removed from this space that they left the cover off for the whole Easter season, and it turned out to be a wonderful experience for them. This is a brand new church in San Diego area, and Claire Wing did the back window. Christine Reinhard designed the furniture, and it's gathered around the altar. We were able to do a sunken space for the musical instruments. This is an alcove shrine to Our Lady of Guadalupe, which the people originally wanted to put on the back corner, and now the Hispanic people feel very much important in their worship in this space. The gathering space is built in an L shape, and so the entire community can gather within the gathering space around the font. And as you walk in, you walk into the font, and then you turn to go into the gathering space. This is a bas relief in one of our assisted living places, and it has turned out to be a place where when the sisters are the vigil for the sisters, they put a table and put the photographs of the deceased there, and at times they have put the cremains in front of that. This is my home parish, and we did a mobile of the peace birds, and it's right as you walk into the front door. It moves with the wind, and it was made by the people. We have a Japanese lady who taught people how to make their peace doves. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilyn. Wonderful presentation. Our next presenter is Scott Parsons.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. It's thrilling to be here with you all and the other artist presenters. Thank you, Pam, as well, for organizing this. So my name's Scott Parsons. I'm here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I teach at a college here called Augustana College in the art department. And I've been doing public art and liturgical art for a couple of decades now. And oh, happy Father's Day. I hope everyone had a good Father's Day and a good summer solstice. I live here with my wife and have two beautiful daughters. And I'm just going to kind of show you a flurry of projects, both public spaces and liturgical sacred spaces. I work in mosaic, terrazzo, and stained glass. And I got my MFA in fine arts at the University of Colorado Boulder years ago. And I've got work projects going on right now in Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, and Minnesota. So I guess there we go. So this is, I wanted to put this one in because this is a solstice project, summer solstice in Durango, Colorado. You're seeing two images. On the left is a 650-pound block of concrete with a spiral shape in it. And that was a cast concrete. And then on the right is what happens on the sunrise of the solstice in the summer. It projects that spiral inside the museum space there on the, this is a part of the Colorado University system, Fort Lewis College in Durango. This is a big terrazzo project I did at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And this is an engineering center's building. It's about 11,000 square feet of terrazzo. The design is based on algorithms, numeric equations, quasi-crystals, nano crystal shapes, fractals. This is another terrazzo floor I did in Orlando. I did 4 at the airport there. And they recently sent me a video of someone getting down on their knee and proposing marriage on another one of my floors there. So I thought that was pretty cool. This is of course, references all the Disney World and SeaWorld and so on. This is in Sioux Falls here. This is an airport project. I did 2 mosaics at the airport. This is Katie Eisenach. She's a Lakota fancy shawl dancer. On the right are some destinations. All the airport board members picked a favorite city, and I stuck in Narnia as a 9:15 destination. This is another project I did, a mosaic. This is based on an Andean cross shape at the Soniso de Mayor Elementary School, and I was actually able to collaborate with the Supreme Court Justice, and she provided the inspirational words that you see shown there below the mosaic. This is a floor mosaic I did. I worked with Mosaica out of Montreal. I was told recently at this church, Twyla Paris performed there, and she looked down at this and said it was the most beautiful thing she had seen. So I just heard that a couple of weeks ago, so I was thrilled about it. This is St. Michael's Parish in Sioux Falls. This is my most recently finished work. It's the first station of 15 stations of the cross. This is glass mosaic. What you may not appreciate there is the size of these. They're smaller than a piece of photocopy paper. They're 8 by 10 inches. So they're almost, in this one, almost 300 pieces of glass in that 8 by 10 size. And this is station 11. And one of the things I wanted to do progressively is we went through the stations is that the colors become more muted. The values there's more contrast to them, and it's kind of a more somber mood as you move forward. So this was when Christ is nailed to the cross. This is in Phoenix, Arizona, or Paradise Valley, between Phoenix and Scottsdale. This is known as La Casa locally. It's the Franciscan Renewal Center. Did 9 windows there. This is the outside largest window, the Marian window, it's called. It's, I think, about 34 feet tall, and it's Camelback Mountain behind there. So you can see this window from Lincoln Boulevard if you're in Phoenix. This is the inside, looking up at that window. It's all made of antique or mouth-blown glass, fired in 2 kilns. So there's kind of a layering of color, and then it's etched away and then fired with vitreous enamels again. And I work with Derek's Glass Studios in Taunusstein, Germany. Here's just another view to show you this window again from the inside. So thematically, with the Assumption of Mary, I'm almost trying to talk about kind of a warping of space and time as she is ascending to heaven there, and then an image from the Hubble telescope rests at the top of that glass. Here's a Reredos 6-panel stained glass piece in the same sanctuary there, and another panel behind the tabernacle. Thematically, the ox and the ass are very important to St. Francis, and so that appears in the Reredos panels. And then the other panels are based on St. Francis's Canticle of Creation. On the left there, you see those who forgive, the stanza, those who forgive, and on the right was like there was Brother Wind, Sister Earth, and this final one here was the last stanza of St. Francis's work that he wrote a few weeks before he died, called Sister Death. This is in the back. Oh, we went through one real quick there. That was a Mother Earth panel. Oh, okay, we're back. So this is at the back of the church. Some of you know Debbie Luke, I'm sure, and that's her relief panels below. And I started originally with just one panel in there, and then a member of the congregation said, "Let's do the rest," and that's how it got completed. This is a gym, a public recreation center in Aurora, Colorado, and I worked with another artist I've done a few projects with, David Griggs, and he did the sculptural part, and I did the stained glass. And there's stained glass throughout with the swimming pool and the basketball court. So there's kind of neat ways of integrating the glass. Here is a 26 window project I was fortunate enough to do at Our Lady of Loretto in Foxfield, just east of Denver in Colorado. And so we'll look at a couple of these. There's clerestory windows. There's a set of windows in the dome there. This is before the ground level windows were installed. Around the dome, around the Lamb of God, are 4 other windows. Actually, the winter one has an alignment with the winter solstice, and it projects light onto the altar around noon. This is the fall window, of course, referencing the beautiful aspen trees and the changing of the colors in Colorado. This is the baptism of Christ, and so this is down at the lower level, probably about 8-9 feet tall, that window. Interspersed between the windows are stations of the cross. This is all hand painted, hand drawn. This is just a grouping of the clerestory windows. Of some of them, there were 10 based on the hierarchy of the angels. Well, there's 9 ranks, and then in the lower left you see St. Michael as the 10th window. This is just looking at these at the viewing tower at Derek's, so you see them morphed together. Seraphim and cherubim, thrones on the top, St. Michael, archangels on the bottom there. This is Gloria Dei. This is a church in Sioux Falls. This is a 24 window, sort of thematically based on the Trinity, sort of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit as you move across from left to right. The largest windows are about 13 feet tall. Each of those weighed about 600, 650 pounds. And that's what I have for you. Thank you for your attention.
Scott, thank you so much for the presentation. Now we will move on to our last presenter, Gianfranco Tassara.
Thank you, Paul. And I'd like to congratulate all my preceding presentators. Great art, beautiful things, beautiful liturgical art. I'm Gianfranco, and I came to Milwaukee in 1973. Was born in Peru, and my family is from Italy. I think those very important factors for my work within the liturgical arts that started in the late 70s. For the last 25 years, I have been running my own studio called Inspired Artisans. I thought for this presentation to concentrate in one very important liturgical fitment that is the tabernacle, and what has happened in the past and what's happening now. When I started in the late 70s, the idea was to remove the tabernacle from the center of the sanctuary to the Blessed Sacrament. Now things are changing. We do tabernacles, some are designed by other people. This is in Austin, St. Vincent de Paul, is marble, granite, and bronze. And it is in the Blessed Sacrament. This is for a Jesuit retreat center. You can see it's bronze and wood. It has a beautiful simplicity. The chapel is for 15 people and it's very, very warm. It's interesting how each one orders have some different types. And this is for a Syro Malabar cathedral in Bellwood, Illinois. Is also their Blessed Sacrament chapel, and they do have also a large tabernacle in the sanctuary. So they operate with two different ones. This is for Franciscans also. This is for Franciscan missions. It's a wood carved angels praying with gold leaf, mosaic, wood, and bronze. It's oak. It's in Wisconsin. This is designed by Ken Grismer. The parish wanted to reuse their door that was on the wall of the origin of the first building. When they renovated, what we do was reuse the door that is bronze and then cover it with wood. This is for a Franciscan province here in Wisconsin. It's quite unique. It's a house. He lives in the house. I think it's a great spirit. A very also have a simplicity of Franciscans. This is similar to the previous one, but more ornate. It's in a Blessed Sacrament, bronze, wood, and mosaic. This is for a Greek Orthodox church in Chicago. It's some basil, and it's the shape of the church, and they have it right in the main altar behind the iconostasis. It's basically bronze and glass, etched glass. This was designed by Ken Grismer for a church in Kingwood, Texas. It's very, very solid. The doors are probably 100 pounds of bronze, marble, and wood. And it's elevated so that there's workable space. This is for a Franciscan monastery in Wappingers Fall, New York. And again, Franciscans has the Franciscan spirit, I think. This is designed by Paul in a church in Madison called St. Denis. It has a mother flare, I think, but it's back in the front, in the sanctuary wall, in the rails wall, kind of going back. We're going back to how it used to be. This is a Blessed Sacrament chapel in St. Michael's in Wheaton, Illinois. The paintings are oil paintings, and the material used is wood. This is in Montgomery, Alabama, and they wanted the Ark of the Covenant piece, and they wanted acacia wood and with the exact sizes of how it's described. And this is brass, and this is in southern Illinois, Fallon, mosaic, granite, and wood. Also in the back of in the front of the church, of the sanctuary. This is in Pittsburgh at the Women's College. It's a college chapel tabernacle, mosaic and wood. This is pretty much the same, the one before for a different church in Michigan. The size is not the correct one, supposedly. This is in Rockville, Maryland, at St. Elizabeth Church. This one we try to replicate a little bit of the glass that was done there in the 50s for the church. And you can see it in the mosaic, the color, basically. This is in San Antonio, Texas. The Alpha and Omega were used in their original tabernacle, and here we refurbished a new one for them using their old elements, but a new housing. This was done for some Dominican sisters in Saratoga, California, and I thought they were very progressive to have the open tabernacle so you can see inside. Very seldom it's done, and this was one of my first ones 25 years ago. This is in a new one that we're working on now for a Marian University in Indianapolis. It's brass, the lily, the chapel is St. Joseph's. That's why we have a lily on the top that's going to be bronze. And it's wood in copper with patina. What can I say? I'm glad to be here and hope I have shown something interesting and in the difference of how it was before and how it's now in terms of moving from one place to another place.
Thank you, Gianfranco. So I am going to turn on the microphones and the webcams of our presenters so that you can see them, and we can go into a question and answer portion of the project. All right, I think we have everybody on audio and our 4 presenters. And so if you have a question that you would like to ask of any of our presenters, please go right ahead. I'm going to start with a question, Sara, from Shelley Coleman Smith, who's asking, how did you decide on the style of clothes for that sculpture?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. The historicity isn't as important to me as the spiritual communication. So, but I wanted, a robe. So I used I made a costume out of some heavy fabric, which I like the way that it fell on the body. And so I made that costume, and it was too plain in the front aesthetically. So I gave him a little tie that wouldn't have been anachronistic, but wasn't necessarily, I'm not an historian as much as a storyteller. And then very importantly, the rope that his robe is being tied with is really rustic looking. because I really wanted to communicate that he was a person of lowly means, a humble person. And so the drapery is kind of, like describing rhythms and all of that. So I just wanted something the way that it flowed from his shoulders and then on his knees, or because his knees are kind of up and asymmetrical. And he's on purpose not wearing any shoes, because I wanted to give this sense of a holy space, and so the removal of shoes. And he's about 3 feet off the ground, so people can touch his toes.
Thank you. Scott Gilbert Singera is asking, first making a comment that your pieces were beautiful. And then he asked, do you find the different locations and intensities of some impacts your stained glass projects?
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm not sure I understood. How did different locations impact the stained glass? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah,
At
so
different locations in the United States, but different. You had some in the Southwest, you had some in the Plain States, and then in other places. So the intensity of sun changes in each location. I'm just curious how that impacts your design.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of this, the antique glass is epoxied onto a carrier plate glass, like a sheet of regular glass, and then it's built as a insulating unit with a UV blocking glass in the front of it on the outside. So like in Phoenix, that big large Marion window was facing south, so we were really concerned about, you know, heat exceeding 100+ degrees and all of that holding up. But and also what I've noticed too, like even in Colorado, the glass, if you're working with vitreous enamels, you lose the subtlety more so than if you're working with the antique or mouth blown glass in the design. So whenever it's a south or southwest, southeast facing glass, I really encourage the use of mouth blown glass. The Gloria Dei piece, the last one in my series of images, that was north facing, and that was just all done in vitreous enamel. So that's a much cheaper way of going, and that was quite effective with the north facing ones.
Norberto, I wanted to just ask a question. I was busy watching the clock to advance the slides, so I didn't get a chance to see fully all of the images that our presenters showed, but I wanted to ask about the pews. And were those standard pews? Were they completely custom, or was it somewhere in between for the church with the hand carved ends?
Yeah, none of our furniture is like a catalog item. Every single project is a custom design. So we can very proudly say that we are the only company in the United States that is using really thick lumber to produce our furniture. And we also are the only manufacturer that right now is doing full-length pews in one piece. You know, the longest lumber piece you can get is 16 feet. And when you have a 35-foot long pew, like in the LA Cathedral, we have some special ways to join the wood to create, you know, a solid one board seat or one solid board back. So every pew you saw in our presentation was custom designed specifically for that project.
Great, thank you. So I have another question from Gilbert. Norberto, as long as we have you on microphone.
Thank you.
Gilbert says that he loves the texturing on the end pieces of the pew, and he's curious if the building committee asked for that, or did your artisan suggest it?
Actually, it was part of the design process. In this project, they had a very large building committee, and we were very fortunate to work hand by hand with the architect and the building committee. So during the process, they wanted to add some of the textured and on the pews, because the pews were radius and they had a padded seat. So they felt that something was missing, and they wanted to add a particular detail, something special into the pews, because most people see the pews like just like a generic furniture. But if you think, it's pretty much the besides the doors and the pews are the only item that really people have contact with on an everyday basis. And so we came with that idea of the hand carved texture to add a little more interest into the pew.
Great, thank you. A question for Marilyn from Pam Hardiman. She asks, she's curious as to why the decision was made to lower the ceiling height.
The ceiling was 40 feet high, and that's why we decided to lower the ceiling, because it had the atmosphere of like just being a factory. It was a big, huge box with little personality. So that's why we did it.
Right, thank you. Sara, I'm curious to ask, just I have had pieces stuck in customs before. How much or how long, did it take to carve the piece, and then how long from the time that it was shipped, you know, just generally from when it was actually installed? I may have missed that in your presentation, paying attention to the time.
Well, the whole project was about 5 years, but I did 2 sculptures, and you know there was a lot of planning and all of that in the beginning. But when the cast arrived in Italy until I arrived was about 6 months, and then after I left, there was a few more weeks to polish it up and crate it, and then it took uh, maybe 2 weeks to arrive in Port Elizabeth, and it was there for several weeks. Since I had a container, I had them send back the plaster model, which is now in my garage, and then the marble, and then I sent some clay that is not available in the United States, and it comes in these little bricks that look a bit like C4. And so customs, they had to bring in the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that I wasn't importing a bomb, and they had to it was really, I mean, it was several weeks, like 3 weeks, and the folks at the church were like, what happened to our sculpture? You said it was coming right away. But this was several years ago, and I think that the Department of Homeland Security was a little dialed up at the time, and so they were really wanting to make sure that that was actually clay coming from Italy. uh, so I'm not sure that it would take as long now, but it it was a long time.
Great, thank you. So a question from Gilbert to Gianfranco. He writes, there were a variety of styles in the tabernacle that you showed. Of the different styles, which do you prefer, and do you find yourself struggling with a style which you don't like?
The style comes a lot from how the people are, who they are. Like, remember we're talking about the Jesuits. They have there is a simplicity piece. The Franciscan with the house. I think the one that I like the most probably is the one for the Marian College in Pittsburgh, which is a combination of wood and mosaic, and it's kind of two elements that are wood is very warm, and mosaic has a longevity of 2,000 years. You know, you can go to Pompeii and see pieces on the floor there that people have trampled for years. So those 2 elements I really like.
Great, and that's the one with the blue mosaic, is that correct?
Exactly, the one with the blue mosaic. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beautiful. So while I'm going to wrap up, it looks like that's all the questions, but I want to thank all 5 of our presenters, Sara, Scott, Gianfranco, Norberto, and Marilyn. Thank you to Pam, who made the initial calls to all of our presenters and lined this all up. And again, to our presenters for the time that you put in. I appreciate all of your talents. It's wonderful to see a group of artists and consultants and tradespeople, craftspeople that make such lovely stuff. Thank you again all for attending, and we'll look forward to hopefully another event like this sometime in the future.